Are you aware? We've touched on this on the podcast, but are you aware that we have been funding both sides of this particular horror, this attack on Ukraine? And it's being pointed out by some observers to our predicament where it concerns global climate change and war is this, that we Americans better not waste this crisis. This is our, I don't know what, 10th, 20th, 50th, 100th, umpteenth confrontation with a, call him a petro-dictator, whose viciousness are possible, and what, I'm referring to Putin, what he has done in Ukraine, are possible only because of the oil wealth that the Russians dig out of the ground. Like I said before, they don't make anything. Anything that comes from Russia is something that's been extracted: oil, gas, coal, diamonds, whatever it is. They don't make anything. And no matter how this war ends in Ukraine, it should end with us, with America, finally, for God's sake, what's it going to take? Finally ending our addiction to oil. It's got to happen. Thomas Friedman, who I don't particularly care for his the person whose worldview I don't particularly care for, but he points this out, quote, "Nothing has distorted our foreign policy, our commitments to human rights, our national security, and most of all, our environment than our oil addiction. Let this be the last war in which we and our allies fund both sides." Yeah, that's what we do. Western nations pump the money into NATO, and we aid Ukraine's military with our tax dollars. And we fund Putin's army of destroyers with our purchases of Russian oil and gas, and are allowing filthy, traitorous scum like those who run the Coke industries to continue doing business in that particular area: oil, gas, anything to kill and poison the atmosphere, kill and poison the planet. Anyway, Friedman says, how stupid is that? Our civilization simply cannot afford this anymore. Well, yeah, isn't that the truth? And climate change, not only has it not taken a time out because of what's happening in Ukraine, it's getting worse. We talked last week about the weather report for the North Pole and the South Pole. And simultaneously, both of the Earth's poles experienced extreme heat waves, especially in Antarctica. I mean, Jesus Christ. In Antarctica, I talked about this last week, temperatures there were 70 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the average for this time of year. And at the North Pole in the Arctic, 50 degrees warmer at the North Pole for this time of year. Those are insane numbers. And if you want to add a little weirdness to something that's already too weird, the North Pole and the South Pole, they're engaged right now in, not engaged, but dealing with opposite seasons. The North Pole, it's winter. The South Pole, it's summer. And they're both melting at the same time. Walter Meyer, who's a researcher with the National Snow and Ice Data Center, recently told the Associated Press, quote, "Yeah, it's definitely an unusual occurrence," end quote. Oh, my God. And last Friday, and this should not come as a surprise, scientists announced that an ice shelf the size of New York City had collapsed in East Antarctica, at the very beginning of this warm spell that has hit that part of the globe. An ice shelf. Half the size of New York City. Now, that was the first time that we humans saw that the frigid region of Antarctica had an ice shelf collapse. That's what the Associated Press, that's how they put it. They added that if all the water frozen in East Antarctica melts, it would raise sea levels more than 160 feet around the world. Now, the ice shelf was already sitting in the water, right? Isn't that what that means? So it already had displaced whatever seawater it was going to displace. But if all the ice on the Antarctica continent were to melt, sea levels would rise more than 160 feet around the world. Jesus, okay. So for all those reasons, it drives me insane to know. No, it doesn't drive me insane. I've been insane for a long time. It just makes me infuriated to know that Joe Biden and the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, are doubling down on our oil addiction rather than doubling down on renewables and efficiency. I think the Biden administration got spooked by these bullshit claims by the fascist Christians that Biden's energy policies are responsible for higher gasoline prices. I mean, who the fuck would believe that? But the Christian fascists know who would believe it. Their base. So Biden and Blinken's team has gone begging to some of the biggest petro dictatorships in the world. Venezuela, Iran, Saudi Arabia, to get them to pump more oil and push gasoline prices down. What the fuck is wrong with us? And the truth that nobody pays any attention to is even if we let U.S. oil companies explore for oil in every national park over which we have control, the near-term effect on gasoline prices would be zip fuck. It wouldn't be anything. But it would make our oil oligarchs, as they are getting now, much richer. CNN Business reported last week that in the past decade, the boom-to-bust U.S. oil industry spent tons of cash to fund all-out production growth, helping to keep prices low. But at the same time, quote, sustaining profits proved elusive. Hundreds of oil companies went bankrupt during multiple oil price crashes, leading investors to demand more restraint from energy CEOs. So today, most U.S. oil company executives and investors don't want to add so much supply that it causes another glut that crashes prices. And shareholders want companies to return excess profits in the form of dividends and buybacks. And the companies want to increase production. I mean, you see what capitalism is doing in just this one particular area. But if you want to defeat Putin and save the planet, we don't have enough time to use what Friedman's talking about, just break our oil addiction. But imagine if we were not dependent on carbon-based fuel. I mean, Hi, Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.